Hi everybody, my name is Bethany. Welcome to the Beauty of Pastel. Today I am painting one of my favorite color combinations, beautiful blues combined with some gorgeous golden colors. I also love to paint water and grasses, and you'll see both in this next video. Thank you for being here. I am using a piece of trimmed, about 12 by 12 is the size that you see right there. This is UArt 500 grit. I have a large roll of it in my studio, but I have a piece of masking tape that is marking off the paper into more of a rectangular shape. That's just because I didn't have a handy rectangular pre-cut piece. I cut my pieces kind of all at the same time. The roll is weighty and a little cumbersome to maneuver, and so when I am cutting my paper, I get it out and I cut about 20 pieces of regular painting size pieces, and then I just work through those until I run out, and then I get the roll back out again. I tape that off because I'm going to use that little strip on this side, maybe to test out some pastels. I'm going to pop up the reference right here. Here's the reference, and this is from, of course, Palo Canyon, like I mentioned. It's a beautiful area full of very diverse types of landscape. When you're in the canyon, you are down, we call it going down to the bottom, because where I live, we actually live on what's called the Cap Rock, which is a huge multi-state mesa that is basically elevated in elevation, and it's very, very flat, and that's what creates prairies. But when you drop off of the Cap Rock, you go down into more water features, there's more trees. This is from the Palo River in Palo Canyon. It has beautiful, lots of mesquite trees, juniper trees, cottonwood trees, and they overshadow and overhang. I really wanted to bring out those warm colors. I am beginning this painting. Normally I begin with blue NuPastel, but this time I decided I wanted a little bit of a warmer effect, and so I chose a warmer NuPastel, which are dark brown, almost brown purple colors, ochre colors, that orange, and also some dark violet. And I'm working it in with the rubbing alcohol, the normal thing that I do, and establishing the dark shapes. Now this area has cutouts in the riverbanks where the water erosion has happened. And you'll see that I'm not using the fan brush quite as much. That's because this flat that I'm using, it tends to move the pastel around a little bit more to where you can create more opaque effects. The fan brush tends to create more wispy, transparent effects because it doesn't pick up as much of the pigment from the pastel. And so you can use different types of brushes to create different effects. And I'm just washing the dark areas in. I'm kind of thinking here about even mark making. I guess these are more brush strokes, but I'm thinking about how the brushes are affecting even the underpainting. I'm not just swirling it around to try to create just a general blah mess. I'm really trying to focus on the brush strokes that I'm creating. I want to paint in the direction of the land. So that means on that far bank where the land is going down, I'm going to create brush strokes that go down. Follow the general flow of the earth, and that will help me create more of a realistic effect while having impressionism. Sometimes people, when they watch my videos, they're surprised at the amount of work that I put into the underpainting. Mostly, I just want to create a value map so the pastel layers, I don't have to work so hard, especially in the dark areas for the pastel layers. I find that those pastels are a little more tricky to deal with. They can create mud, as people like to say. They can flake off, get on your mat if you choose to mat your finished piece. And so when I work very hard to create the proper value map, I don't have to apply as many of the dry, dark pastels. Right now I'm using a Giraud pastel, and I love these. They have this beautiful scratchy quality to them. I'm going right back in with the rubbing alcohol, using that Giraud pastel that I put down to further establish the very dark tree mass. Of course, in any kind of landscape design that we can do, dark tree masses are the darkest parts of our landscape. We have dark trees, we have a light sky. Angled land is a little different. It has a brighter effect, and it all depends on how much light that object is absorbing, of course, from our big sky. And so my trees, I like to establish a very dark tree because that way I can just lighten it up, and that's easier for me than trying to add shadow back in. I'm using that same Giraud right here to sketch in some little twigs and branches, just those dark little areas, playing around. I'm just having fun. I love this stage. It's fun to develop a value map, testing some pastels over there on the side. And then that way I can trim off that piece and I can make two little tiny paintings for another just day practice when I don't have as much time to work on a big piece. I'm kind of going back and forth between about 3 or 4 new pastel and Giraud that are very similar in value and color, weaving in the darkness of those little cutouts in the riverbank and also in the tree. Now what I'm doing is beginning to bring in some softer pastels and some different colors. So this is a dark green Terry Ludwig, just putting in some green so I can warm up this piece a little bit. Of course, right now there is warmth in the orange, and lavender is more warm than blue, but I want to bring some life in here. And so I'm just going to start to establish some of these different areas of color. Oftentimes when I'm adding color, what I'm doing is I'm thinking of adding, where is the light hitting and how is it affecting what it is hitting? Of course, light is warm. I mean, generally always, light is warmth. Look at things at sunset when the light is hitting it, and you can see how orange and peach and golden the light makes things. And so when we begin to think of light as warmth, then that way when we're painting light, it will help us because we just have to think, oh, we'll pick a warmer color. I established the very dark eroded areas, but then I added a little bit of green because there's some light peeking in. Of course, this is a Rembrandt orange that I'm using right now. Using the side, I'm not really using the point, although it maybe kind of looks like that. I'm using the edge of the front to push down and flick up, and that's going to help me create that grassy effect. Of course, this is a very warm green. This is that same green. I think I use this green maybe in every single painting, bringing in some warm greens and just kind of playing around, going back and forth between color, which is going to help me establish these lit areas. Flicking upwards, creating those grassy effects, added all that golden that you see. It's the same Giraud pastel that I was using before. Bringing in some light, continuing to weave color in, using mostly hard pastels. I like to use the harder pastels for grassy areas. They're more linear, and you can use them gesturally. You can use the side when you want more of a scumbling effect. You can use the tip. You can see me doing there to make more sketchy marks. And I'm working my way up in value. I had that dark established base, and now I'm just focusing on putting and weaving in different colors. Greens, oranges, goldens, using a very kind of a limited palette right now. I haven't, of course, put anything in the water just yet. I don't really always work in all areas of a painting all at once. I like to establish areas sometimes before I move on to others, as you can see. This is always fun for me, as I love to add this complementary color. Just beautiful blues. I haven't really done anything to the sky yet, but of course, when I have a blue water, I am going to have a blue sky because the water is reflecting the sky. One thing I am working on in my own practice, I teach for you guys, and I teach local classes at my art institute, and I also teach workshops. I also work on learning new things for me. And one thing that I am really trying to be conscious of is marks in water. I, in the past, have done a lot of blending in water, but I have since kind of changed the way that I like to paint. Right there, obviously I was changing something I didn't like. I brushed it out. But I like a more, I guess for lack of a better word, choppy effect in water with weaving in similar colors, a very analogous color scheme in water, and less blending with fingers. I like the variegated quality it brings. You can really get some wonderful luminous effects when you do that. And so that's something that I'm working on in my own. And for just your knowledge, the paintings that I paint for you, I've usually never painted them before, and this is my working method. This is me figuring things out. Sometimes that can be a little scary because when I set out to record, it takes a lot of effort to have a quiet time blocked out where nobody is here and I can just paint. And sometimes it goes well and sometimes it doesn't, but that's really what works for me, and it is still exciting for me. As you can see, my working method is adding things in, brushing things out. Whenever you brush out, of course, you can see that pastel dust is falling. I have a little foam core lip underneath my board that catches all that pastel dust. I'm not blowing on the pastel at all, and I'm brushing straight down. But even when you brush off, that there's still remnants of those colors that are on the paper that continue to tone the paper and continue to add sparkle and really luminous touches of light that we as pastelists we can achieve, because there are crystals in our pastels and they reflect. Right now I am adding in some color. Now when I did this sky, I'm just kind of thinking of what is the base color of the sky. Do I want it to be adding in those varying tones and using my marks to inform what the item is. One thing that I really like to do that you can see right there is when you have a grassy area in front of water, you can actually bring the blue down into that grassy area, which will create its own type of grass. Brushed a little bit of it off just to reveal some more of that tooth, but those colors and those values that I had put down, they're still present, and so they are still part of the painting. Now this is that blue new pastel. I couldn't stay away from it, even though I didn't use it to do any of the underpainting. I wanted to bring a little bit of blue into those shadows. Since I do have a blue sky and blue water, I wanted to have a little more color cohesion with the tree mass and the sky and the water. Adding a touch of little lighter turquoise in the distance and softening that edge with my finger. We have soft edges. It tends to make things recede. Cutting in a little bit in the tree shape there, lightening up that sky a little bit, but allowing some of those colors that I had put in the sky earlier just to peek through that purple, because I have purple in my water, and so I wanted to add some purple in the sky. Using directional marks in my water, making that chunky, choppy effect that I love. Just really kind of going slowly here. And I'm going to darken this. I added so much light that I kind of lost that little dark edge. So I'm going to work so you can see my head peek in. That's because I'm trying to get closer so I can really be careful here. I'm real careful not to add a solid dark line along that riverbank. I don't want to create too dominant of an angled line, just because it would swoop people right back out of the painting. Touching, and oh look, there are my mats. I did this for my Facebook Live, and some of you didn't get to see that because you're not on Facebook, but that is a great way for me to test if I think something is close to being finished or maybe is finished. pulling out these mats that I have. They're old and dirty and stained from my fingers, but they are a good way to just kind of see your piece without all the messy edge. I don't have, I have an 8x10 size and an 8x8 size. I really need a 9x12 size as well, but those are kind of hard to find. Lighter pastels can make really fun little ripples, and good way to direct the eye to darker masses is to add a little light spot at the bottom of the riverbank. It just kind of indicates, look, this is where the water is bumping up against this land. Adding in some fun spring greens into the water and into the grass areas. And then I also decided I wanted to widen the water at the bottom, and so I am sweeping the pastel across and down over those grasses. I am pushing hard, but it's kind of medium hard. That way I can kind of cut in to that riverbank that's closest to us. Adding in some golden reflected color into the water. And then I love this part, adding this color is more of a sunset color, but adding it into the distant field I thought just really brought some power to this piece. Just kind of finished it off. Whenever I was holding the mat up earlier, just felt like the painting still just wasn't quite there. It needed something. Wanted to add some of these touches of this coral down into the water and around. I had used orange in the first underpainting, but I hadn't really added a lot of orange in the grasses, and so this is a lighter orange that just really helped it. And then also that dark blue at the bottom. When you have a darker area towards the bottom of your piece, I think it's more of a gentle approach to bringing your viewer into the painting. So I always like to try to darken the water towards the forefront, just touching it in, stepping it back, of course, and really looking carefully, and then bringing the mat back in. And there it just feels better. And you can see that darker foreground, how it's just like a gentle approach into the water. Hi everybody, it's Bethany and I'm here in my studio. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you learned something today, I would love it if you would give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and also click that little notification bell so you can know whenever I have a new video coming up. If you'd also love to support this content coming out, I would love it if you would consider visiting my Patreon page. The link is below. I'm so excited to be bringing these lessons to you weekly, and I hope you're excited too. Bye.